Let's dive right into this explainer. When we look at the geopolitical map of the 6th century, our eyes naturally gravitate toward the heavyweights, right? We've got the massive Byzantine Empire dominating the northwest and the sprawling Persian Sasanian Empire holding down the east. But if you look right smack in the middle, at the Arabian Peninsula, you don't just see this vast, empty expanse. What we actually find is one of the most complex, volatile proxy battlegrounds in human history.
So, what exactly governed the Arabian desert before the rise of Islam? Well, to really understand this era, we have to completely shatter that old misconception of an empty, lawless desert. It's just not true. When we actually analyze the history, we uncover a highly complex chessboard. We're talking intense proxy wars, wildly shifting economic epicenters, and surprisingly sophisticated civic structures. It was a region totally defined by its internal divisions and heavy external pressures.
Which brings us to part 1, the geopolitical chessboard, and its macro-political polarization.
The political structure of the peninsula basically split into two very distinct groups. On the outer edges, hugging the borders of the big empires, you had the crowned kings. Now these guys looked and acted like monarchs, but let's be real, they were essentially imperial proxies. They didn't have true independence. But then, if you go deep into the isolated desert interior, you had the uncrowned tribal heads. They didn't sit on formal thrones or wear crowns, but they enjoyed total autonomy. They wielded absolute dictatorial power over their domains, enjoying privileges that were honestly right on par with royalty.
Let's shift gears a bit for part 2. We're looking at Yemen's economic collapse, going from an absolute powerhouse to a colony.
The data here tracks a total economic collapse unfolding over centuries. Way back before 650 BC, Makrib Sheba kicks things off by building the highly strategic Marib Dam. This ushers in an era of serious domestic stability and massive trade dominance under the kings of Sheba. But watch what happens around 115 BC when the Himyar tribe takes over. Their trade just completely collapses. Why? Well, Roman naval fleets started dominating the Red Sea, totally shifting global trade routes away from them. And the fallout was brutal. By 300 AD, Yemen fell into a dark period of foreign occupation, subjected to Abyssinian and Persian colonial rule for over 3 centuries. Talk about a drastic fall from grace.
Panning back up north, we hit part 3, the imperial buffer states, and exactly how these empires managed their northern borders.
What we're looking at here is a perfect mirror image proxy war. On one side, in Seerah, which is modern-day Iraq, the Persians installed Arab puppet leaders known as the Lakhma kings. But the Persians weren't taking any chances. To guarantee absolute loyalty, they kept a full Persian military battalion permanently stationed right there to squash any hint of rebellion. Now on the flip side, over in geographical Syria, the Byzantines were doing the exact same thing. They initially weaponized the Qudaa tribe to defend their borders. Later on, the Ghassanidids defeated the Qudaa, and the Byzantines just handed that proxy rulership right over to the victors. Both of these superpowers were playing the exact same game.
The crucial takeaway here is that these global superpowers recognized a fundamental truth. Trying to rule the local Arab tribes directly, it was an absolute logistical nightmare. They knew it wouldn't work. So the strategic solution was to create a classic geopolitical buffer zone. They essentially let Arab tribes fight other Arab tribes on behalf of the empires. It's a textbook strategy of proxy warfare, honestly the kind of strategy we still see superpowers using today.
Now let's zoom right into the Hijaz region for part 4. Makkah's civic petite state, the democratic anomaly.
Surrounded by all these puppet proxy kings and dictatorial warlords, Makkah functioned as this incredible anomaly. Around 440 AD, a leader named Qusay bin Kilab set up a highly sophisticated, completely decentralized civic administration. Honestly, it reads remarkably like a modern governmental org chart. You had an executive council, the An-Nadwa House, which functioned basically as a parliament for high-level consultations and marriage contracts. Then you had a divided military command. Bani Umayyah held the national banner, while Bani Maksum managed the cavalry and the footmen. And on top of that, they had a dedicated judiciary run by Bani Saham specifically to settle disputes.
And it gets even more impressive when we look at the sheer scope of this administration. Makkah had dedicated financial oversight handled by Bani Tayyim to manage fines and blood money. They had an actual foreign affairs department, with Bani Adi acting as state mediators. But here is the most remarkable part. Qusay instituted a genuinely progressive public works and welfare system. It was funded by an annual land tax. And get this, those funds were utilized strictly to feed impoverished pilgrims. It's just a fascinating petite state, operating with this really unique blend of secular administrative authority and religious custodianship.
But stepping outside that structured zone brings us to Part 5, the tribal economy of war, chaos in the interior.
Out in the inner desert, things ran on a highly inequitable war economy. Remember those uncrowned tribal heads we talked about earlier? Well, they operated basically as dictatorial demi-governments. Whenever a tribe engaged in conflict, the chief would automatically claim a massive 25% of all war spoils right off the top. I mean, talk about a steep local tax rate, right? Plus, they got the absolute first pick of any captured assets. The entire rest of the tribe just had to divide whatever was left over.
You can probably guess the result. This hyper-competitive, top-heavy economic environment drove constant, brutal warfare. It means that when we look at the Arabian Peninsula in this era, we absolutely shouldn't see a blank space on a map. We are looking at a deeply fragmented, highly volatile puzzle made up of weaponized proxy states, sophisticated civic petite states, and fiercely warring interior tribes. The whole region was just an absolute pressure cooker.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Looking at all this fractured history, the proxy wars, the total economic collapses, the greedy tribal chiefs in these isolated city-states, what kind of monumental, paradigm-shifting force would it possibly take to unite this chaotic landscape? Because whoever could actually solve that puzzle, well, they would ultimately change the global world order forever.